I feel like when you feel lonely, you have this disconnect with not just other people, but also with yourself. So for me, like dealing with loneliness really start with connecting with yourself and really being okay with your own company, because you can be alone, but you don't have to feel lonely when you are alone. And at the same time, you can also feel lonely when you are around people, because maybe you just feel like you cannot connect with those people, right? So, for example, I love dancing. So when I moved to Australia, I would just go to a salsa party because I know I love that. Types of breathing exercises to just regulate your nervous system. Journaling is something that can really help you to ground yourself.
Hi, welcome to Rooted and Routed podcast. I'm your host, Sabia Pathan Vituk, and today I have somebody very special. This is my first of all, podcast online. I have a special guest from the Netherlands. Her name is Veerle, but I would like her to really introduce herself properly because I know I am fumbling. Let me get her on board. Veerle, on to you. Let's start.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into it with you. And yeah, congrats on your first online episode, I would say. You have to start somewhere, so it's great that you took the step. Yeah.
Did I completely covered everything that you have done as your background?
Yeah, no, that was a great summary. So I have been an immigration lawyer for, I think, about 8 years in corporate before I changed to being a certified travel coach and then a life coach. And then I added Reiki energy healings as well, meditation. So I've been doing a lot of different things. And this year I also started to focus on content creation, like specifically for traveling. So just adding like different things to the mix. So yeah, that was a great summary.
Okay. Well, I'm happy that I did well. In your personal journey as an expat, are there anything that has influenced your approach towards your work? So suppose you have lived in Australia, right? I think that's the only place where you worked as immigration lawyer, or am I wrong?
Yeah, so when my first move was to Spain. At that time, I was still studying. So I was studying international law, and then I moved to Spain for a year for my master's degree.
Okay.
And afterwards, I moved to Cambodia, and there I was an intern with the United Nations. So that was like an internship. I worked there at the tribunal.
Okay.
And then when I moved to Australia, it was for my corporate job as an immigration specialist. And I was helping people with their visas, like expats, helping them with their immigration procedures, not just to Australia, but basically like worldwide, helping people move to a different country, coordinate those moves, and specifically like related to the visa process.
So you were helping the Australians with the visas to go to different countries, or am I wrong?
Not necessarily only Australians, basically anyone who was moving countries. So it could be an Australian person, could be someone else, like me, a Dutch person moving to Australia, could be someone from China moving to the States, like whatever, like it could be any move basically. So I was coordinating everything and helping people to make sure that the moves would go smoothly.
Right.
Yeah.
And did that profile influence your approach towards work in the sense, were you then conscious of your next move when you're applying for a visa? I think normally the Dutch passport doesn't need a lot of visa. So I think you have access to many different countries, right? But
yeah, true. I mean, when you really move countries, you usually do need a visa, also with a Dutch passport. So as a tourist, it's usually easier. You don't need visas in many places. But when you really move somewhere, like when I moved to Australia, I needed a work visa, and it's for most countries, and basically I would say almost all passports. Wherever you go and you plan to stay long term, you want to work in another country, you would need some sort of visa. So for me personally, I think I always had this desire to travel and to live in different countries,
Yeah.
and then to also help other people in my work with sort of the same dreams. And
Yeah.
that was specifically for the visa, but of course that's an important part of the process of moving countries. So for me, it was rewarding to work in that field, because when you help someone, get their visa, and then you know that they're going to take that step and move to another place, sometimes by themselves or sometimes with their family, it's really rewarding to know that, okay, you help them in the process and they're really going to make that deep dream come true.
Right.
And for me personally, I think also because I worked with so many expats, I also had that urge to move countries again, and that I was like, oh, I also want to go to another place and discover a new country. So I think it went both ways, like enjoying helping other people with it, but also having that dream for myself to really make it happen.
But also, like, I think, is there a situation where you're, let's say, in a social event among some expats or friends or family back home, then all of a sudden somebody talks about, oh, I'm going to travel, blah, 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 on that place next month. And then you all of a sudden start to ask, did you make sure, do you have that document? Did you make sure that you have the invitation letter or something like that? I think because that may influence, right? That's how your work influences your personal life as well. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be that person.
okay, but it is
Yeah.
possible, right? I mean,
I
it
think
comes
when
quite
someone,
naturally.
yeah, when someone asks me about it, of course, I'm happy to, share some tips and stuff. But I think it's the same with coaching. Like sometimes, of course, when I hang out with friends or with family and someone shares something with me, it's easy to want to help someone, but it's also like then it's maybe not the right time and place. Like someone has to be open to that, and otherwise you sort of cross that boundary. So I'm always trying to be
Yes, exactly.
careful with that and be like, okay, I first want sort of that permission from the other person before
Yeah,
I would start giving my advice.
yeah,
Yeah, not to cross that boundary.
yeah. I understand. Do you have any challenges that you face in different cultures? And I mean, you lived in Cambodia, Spain, and all of these cultures are quite different. Even if it was as an intern and not as an expat, there were challenges, I'm sure, about the language, the food. But is there any specific challenges that you feel like, okay, that was really hard, and this is how I overcame those challenges? Was there any such incident?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like every time when I moved somewhere new, there were different challenges,
Yeah.
and I think there won't be any move for anyone without challenges. It's sort of part of the process, and I mean sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's a bit harder. But for example, if I think about my move to Spain, when I moved there, I didn't even speak Spanish,
Mm.
and then I came across this huge language barrier because no one spoke English, and my all my classes at the university were in Spanish. My housemates only spoke Spanish. So from day one, I really had to dive into it, and I was like, I have to learn this language as soon as I can, because I sort of to survive, because otherwise I don't know how am I going to, yeah, to make it through this year. So it was very challenging in the beginning, but it also helped me to really learn the language very quickly because I had no choice. So like looking back, I'm grateful for that challenge, because otherwise maybe I wouldn't have had the chance to learn Spanish fluently, but because I had no choice, I learned it very quickly. So I also like to see those type of challenges as an opportunity to grow and to
Transform.
learn new skills, yes, and to transform.
Yeah.
And I think for if I think about Cambodia, one of the biggest challenges was also like the cultural differences
Yeah.
and the language that they speak there. I was like, there's no way I can learn that quickly, and I wasn't going to spend that much time there as well. So I was trying to find a way to still connect with locals in a way that I didn't need to sort of dive into the language, but still feel like I was part of the community. So that was also challenging because sometimes it felt like I was in this expat bubble, just hanging out with internationals at my work and after work, because it was just harder to connect with the local community. So that was quite a challenge, because I'm a person who always tries to connect
Yeah.
and to feel like, okay, how can I really, yeah, get to know the locals better as well. So that was a challenge there because it was so completely different. And also like the language, just, how it's written, I couldn't even read it. Like I had no idea.
So this is surprising, right? It's because people go for internship to places, yes, exciting places where they can learn, but knowing the fact that there is a language barrier starting with your classes in college, right?
Yeah.
Still went ahead with those challenges, right? I mean, I think Spanish, yeah, the script is also quite different, but not a lot of letters. But Cambodia, uh, how did you how did you get in touch with the expats though? I'm wondering because I think as an intern you must have your college or yeah the university that you are in.
Well, actually,
The
that
social
internship that I
circle.
did, I was already graduated, so I wasn't linked to the university anymore. This was after I graduated, so it was really like to gain work experience.
Right.
And my team in Cambodia was like both international and local, so it helped me to first start connecting with colleagues, and in there everyone spoke English, so that was like easier. Like the work bubble was in English. But then outside of work, it was harder to meet other people because it's like what you said, like how do you meet people then if you don't speak the language? So yeah, especially in the beginning, I would first hang out with other internationals and like slowly but surely connect with more people. And after a while, some of the locals who were working in my team would invite me as well to hang out with them after work. And that's how I sort of got more in touch with the local community as well. So it took a bit more time than my experience in Spain. But yeah, I think sometimes you have to give yourself time as well to connect with people and to have some patience, especially when there are language barriers or cultural barriers, and really give yourself some time to find connections. But I feel like as long as you're open to it,
Yeah.
it will happen. It just sometimes you need to have some patience.
How long were you there? I mean, was the internship just for a year or so, or was it less than a year?
No, it was less, yeah.
Boy,
So it also gave me less time. But for example, Australia, I spent 3 years there. So it
nice.
was completely different because then you really have more time to build friendships, to build more connections. And of course, I didn't have a language barrier there. Although in the beginning, even English was a bit of a, of a struggle just to get used to the accent.
I think that comes
Yeah.
then under the part of cultural challenge, right? It's not the language barrier, language challenges, but purely the culture. I think so. I'll come to that point later on in the conversation, but
Okay.
I think Cambodia is indeed one of the places where I think many would uh, struggle, not just with language, but also with the food. So I think you didn't really face any of that challenge, I guess.
No, the food was actually, I loved it. It was great. I actually never cooked there because it was more expensive to go to the supermarket than to just eat out.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, so it was like, oh, this is actually easy in a way. And I did like the local food. So I would just, yeah, eat out all the time because if I would want to cook at home and sort of cook, the Western food that I was used to,
Yeah,
that was much more expensive. So I was like, no, let me just adjust and eat local food. And it actually was great because it's also the fresh food, right? Like,
quite
I
fresh.
feel like it's part of like adjusting to where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a culture. That's true. I mean,
Yeah.
in all of this, when you were looking for the circle, the social circle, and connecting with international people, was there a moment that you felt like you were dealing with loneliness? A struggle of okay, I'm the only one maybe from my country who is here maybe for like a shorter period, right? If there are other expats there that you met, they were there for a longer period, but you were there knowingly for a short period, and within that short period you have to gain your work knowledge, you have to meet friends, but at the same time you also have some moments of loneliness. How did you navigate your emotions around that loneliness? What did you do? Maybe I think that can help the others to understand that.
Yeah. I think I never experienced like really like a deep feeling of loneliness.
Okay.
But I think that also comes because I always found ways to sort of be okay with my own company. I think that's one of the things that I've learned to sort of deal with those type of feelings. Like I feel like when you feel lonely, you have this disconnect with not just other people but also with yourself. So it for me, like dealing with loneliness really start with connecting with yourself and really being okay with your own company, because you can be alone but you don't have to feel lonely when you are alone. And at the same time you can also feel lonely when you are around people, because maybe you just feel like you cannot connect with those people, right?
Yeah.
So I think it really starts with being okay with yourself and really feeling at home within yourself. And one of the things that always help me when I'm at home, but also when I'm traveling or living abroad, is to journal. So I've always been journaling, and just every morning I would just write down, and I still do that right now. Just write down how I'm feeling,
Mm.
what my intention is for the day, what I want my day to look like, or what I have planned, and just basically writing everything down that's in my mind, and to just sort of clear my mind before I start my day.
Yeah.
And that really helps me to create that connection with myself. And so that's really something I would advise to people who might be struggling with loneliness right now, to start like really focusing on yourself, like, okay, what is actually going on? Am I okay with my own company? And starting from there, like that sort of journey of self-discovery. And besides that, another part, of course, is also connecting with other people.
Right.
So if you feel like lonely because you maybe miss connections, also look for those connections. Like sometimes you really have to take the initiative, and that can be challenging and scary when you are somewhere new and you just have to connect with strangers and hope they're nice. But
Yeah.
it is taking that initiative and putting yourself out there to create those connections. And what has helped me, for example, is to do activities that I already like doing. So,
Yeah.
for example, I love dancing. So, when I moved to Australia, I would just go to a salsa party because I know I love that.
Right.
And then I would meet like other people who have the same interests. So I was like, oh, maybe there's some nice people that I can hang out with. But at least I would know that the place I would go to would already feel more comfortable
Yeah.
than if, for example, I would go somewhere, an activity that I had never done before, then that's already like uncomfortable. And then meeting people is also, then it
Yeah.
becomes like a
I
bit
think
more
one
of a challenge.
I think one of it should be your comfort zone, something that you really like, and then an element where you don't like, or something which is new to you. And then when you combine that, then it's, I think, not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's, I think, anywhere you are, right? It's really creating that social life for yourself. And yeah, what you mentioned as well, don't become dependent on the people you meet, but still know your own identity and try out different things, go to different types of places or different types of meetups to meet a
Mhm.
variety of people, see who you connect with.
Yeah.
Maybe some people you don't connect with, and that's fine. Like it's also good to know yeah, what you enjoy or who you enjoy spending time with, and that's how you can create those deeper friendships. And I think besides that as well, when you feel lonely, it's not just about meeting new people, but also trying to stay in touch with the friends you already have back home or your family. Because sometimes what also happens is then that you can be too focused on sort of building like your new life in a way that you feel like you lose connection with the people you already had in your life. And it can be a challenge because most of the time it's up to you to stay in touch with those people,
Yeah.
because you went away, and it's like everyone just moves on with their life and they're like, oh, I'm sure she's fine, she moved there, should be okay. But to stay in touch and to keep those relationships also warm and connected, it's important to also put the effort in there to stay in touch. And yeah, especially with different time zones and stuff like that, it can be a challenge. But just to put in some effort, it can also help you to feel less lonely when you know you have some support from back home, because you basically left that support system behind when you moved to another country. So in a way, you search for a new support system around you, like
Yeah.
offline in a way.
Yeah.
But then also, it's still important to stay in touch with like your family and friends if you can, and of course if you want to. But yeah, in my experience as well, it does help to not sort of burn all your how do you say, bridges? I think it's an
Yeah,
expression, right? I
yeah.
was like, how does it go? Yeah.
Is
When
is it a Dutch expression?
no, I think it's English, but that's why I was doubting, because I'm like, I'm mixing up expressions in different languages now.
I got that. But I think that
Yeah.
is also one of the things, right? The challenge of language, when you're in a country, you think, oh, it's English, I can manage. But then they have this some phrases that you just don't
Yeah.
get, right? Uh,
True. Sometimes I make up my own my
me
own
too.
words, I think so.
So yeah, sometimes these kind of small things, these are very small things, right? You will,
Yeah,
you kind of somehow feel like, ah, a phone call will not make a difference, but really that makes a difference.
true.
Oh,
Yeah, and I love that example because it also shows that we all experience things from our own
exactly.
perspective.
Yeah.
So that's also a thing, like maybe you experience something completely different than someone else.
Mhm.
Or yeah, what you said, when you talk to a family member, they maybe just see your photos and think you're having the best time, but maybe internally you're actually struggling, and you have something that they don't see, right, until you actually speak about it. And then it's like, oh, actually this is also going on. So
Yeah.
that's why it's also important to have those connections.
What are the practical steps and strategies that you advise to people before they are relocating? I know one has to, of course, prepare with the documents and the visas and stuff. But besides that, is there something like a some mental mind shift that they need to prepare as part of strategy? Because you're not prepared for the unfamiliar things, right?
Yeah, I love that question because most people actually don't think about that part. They just focus on what you said, like the documents and everything they need to arrange,
Yeah.
which makes sense because of course that's important.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is also like really looking at your mindset and like your mental and emotional state. And it's so important to also focus on that because eventually you take yourself with you wherever you go. So if you can make sure like you feel stable and you feel confident and you feel ready to embrace like the unknown that you step into, that can make the process so much smoother than if you are completely stressed or overwhelmed or just so scared to even take the step. It
Yeah.
can be very challenging even to just, take the practical steps of arranging the documents. So that's sometimes what I notice as well when I work with my coaching clients, is that they get overwhelmed in the process of just organizing themselves.
Yeah.
And then it's really like, yeah, what you said, focusing on your mindset and really finding ways to calm yourself down and to deal with that stress. And I have all types of different tools that I've developed over the years for myself, and now I share it with other people as well. For example, like types of breathing exercises to just regulate your nervous system, because especially when you move countries, so much is happening at the same time. It's easy to get overwhelmed. Like it's almost something you cannot avoid, right? Like so many changes are going on. And then when you arrive in a new country, it's like so many different triggers in a way, like language and culture, and the city is new, everything is new, food, yeah, the climate, like basically everything is different than what you're used to.
Yeah.
So it's not just physically that you have to get used to that, but also mentally and emotionally you're going through all those changes. So finding ways to take care of your emotional well-being and your mental well-being is very important, so that you can really feel stable and feel grounded when you go through all those changes. So as I said, like certain types of breathing exercises can help with that. What I shared before, like journaling,
Yeah.
is something that can really help you to ground yourself. Yeah, it's trying out different things. Like I always like to give people sort of a toolkit, and then they can try out what works for them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like for example, what I enjoy, like journaling or meditating, doesn't always work for people. Like it's also trying out what works for you. So I never say like, oh, you have to do this and this will work. It's more like try it out and see how it works for you, if you like it or not. If you feel like it makes a difference, keep on going. And if not, maybe it's not for you and you can try something else. But there's so many different ways. It's just figuring out what works for you, but at least being aware of that. is
Yeah.
already the first step.
Yeah.
I think that's where you can make the most difference, really being aware of that you're going through those changes, being kind to yourself and giving yourself time to adjust as well, and being like, okay, I'm taking this step right now. I'm courageous to even do this,
Yeah.
because many people dream about it but are too scared to take the step. So you already took that step. That's already a huge achievement. And then just being kind to yourself while you're going through all the changes. I think that's the first thing that you can really do for yourself to make it easier.
Do you think in this process is connecting with expats in that host country that you're moving to also helps? Because that is, I think, as well a very important practical tip that one has to think about, because not the only one moving to as an expat. There are many other people around there. Maybe they're not from your country, from your as the same nationality as yours, but then you do have this expat clubs around. If not, I think there are many groups on Facebook that you can connect. So the guidelines that you kind of help with, that is more with the emotions, I think so. But do
Yeah.
you also have some connections or network, let's say, in different parts of the world that you can that you kind of guide them that, okay, this is a group that would be nice for you to connect with?
Yeah, like I help people both with like what I just shared, the mindset part
Right.
and the mental support, but also more the practical steps. So if someone gets stuck in the process, but also what you just mentioned, like already getting some connections in the new country, that can be super helpful, so that you feel like you can already ask some questions to people who are already there, or you already create some connections, and maybe people be like, okay, once you arrive, let's meet up for coffee.
Yeah.
And just sort of having that message already can really create some sort of comfort in your mind, that you're like, oh, I'm moving there by myself, but I'm sort of not completely alone, because I already created a few connections and I know I can meet up with some people, even though don't know those people yet. But just having those sort of small connections already can really make a difference. So yeah, I love that, to just already reach out to people, become part of the community, at least already online. And then once you arrive, make sure you schedule a few meetups or like coffee dates with some people, just
Exactly.
to take those first little steps. Yeah.
Now, in your corporate clients that you have you come across somebody where the companies organize a pre-trip, a pre-visit? So before you move, the family comes over, looks at the location, looks around the school, look around the neighborhood, catch up with the local, I mean, the expats, existing expats there. Do you have such corporates who are doing this already?
Yeah, people sometimes do that. Yeah, it's especially when expats move with their family,
Right.
especially if it's, for example, younger children. They like to already look at schools, or visit some houses, to already look at the neighborhood they want to live in, or those type of things, to have a bit more of a soft landing.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a thing that people do. Like in my own personal experiences, I never had the chance
Oh boy,
to do
really?
that. Like, especially, for example, when I moved to Australia, it's not like you just, go there for a visit before. It's quite far from the Netherlands. So, yeah, my moves were always sort of like a surprise in a way. Of course, I did my research before, but I never really knew where I was going to live, for example, or yeah, what the city would look like and stuff like that. So I always feel like if you have the chance to visit before you really make the move, it can really be easier. It can be helpful to just have an idea of like, okay, this is what the city looks like. Oh, these neighborhoods. I feel like I would like to live in one of those, or visit some houses already,
Yeah.
get an idea of the vibe, connect with some people, stuff like that. It can really be helpful. Yeah.
Because the expats that I have around, most of them have that facility, and I think that really helps. And that I think every companies should do it. I understand, like in your case, a pre-visit to Australia just to have a look at the school and stuff, that can be expensive.
That's a great point. Yeah. And that happens often, because it's not taken into account.
Yeah.
Like the family who's traveling with the expat, whether like the the husband is working or the wife is working or whatever the construction is, like the family, like there's always one part of the family who sort of comes along and has to figure out life and maybe find a job as well locally, or just stay at home and just figure out, okay, what am I going to do here in this country
Right.
if you move for the partner's job, right? So yeah, I think it's very important to also take care of the family members. And I know some companies who have sort of this support program for the expat partners, but not all companies do. And I think it's so important to think about that, because especially what you said, then what happens is that the family is unhappy, and then eventually like the employee will also be unhappy and will be like, okay, I want to move back
Yeah.
because this is not working.
Yeah.
So it's definitely important to think about everyone who is involved
Yeah.
and
I
not
feel
just
like a happy
related to the job. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happy household is really crucial for like a happy household is equals to a happy employee. So
Yeah.
his productivity is much better. He performs better because he's motivated and going back home, having a happy family, the kids are happy at school, the wife have got some connection, boom, done. But if it is not, then it's just the opposite. So even if the employee is very good at his work, um, his profile is good, he's got good connection at work, but at home, if it is not happy, then I feel like in scenarios like that, companies should really consider the expats from different angle, not just that okay, you have a family and then you bring the family to a country, pay for their school education fees or a house, the rental house. I think it is beyond that. You need to consider what the expat spouses are doing or can do, and what is their
Yeah.
potential. Because I think in your case as well, when you are supporting the spouses, I think you support spouses, or are you also supporting the employees who are moving?
Yeah, like so both. So I work with all types of clients basically. So the expats, the partners, sometimes like also I will also work with digital nomads, for example. So not
Yeah,
just expats, but yeah, all types of basically everyone who's moving countries in
right.
whatever capacity they move, whether they move for work or whether they move as a family member or want to find work abroad or whatever it is. So everyone's story is quite unique, but there are also those challenges that we spoke about that are universal, like just adjusting to a new place. That's what needs to happen for everyone. And for some people it's easier than for others, but it's definitely something that we all go through.
Yeah,
And it can really be helpful to get support with that, because it's not always easy. And especially when it's linked to a company and that company only provides like the practical support, like, okay, we pay for your flight tickets and your apartment, and it's nice, of course, but there's also another part that they
yes,
should think about, and that's really like the well-being of someone, and how does someone actually deal with all the changes, like mentally. Because if that part is forgotten, then yeah, what we said before, then eventually after a while, if someone just feels miserable, then
yeah,
it's nice to have a nice apartment, but it doesn't help.
yeah.
You just want to leave, and that's what happens. Yeah.
I think I'm not too sure how much are you aware of companies offering the expats. Do you know that some companies also offer expat spouse support? Now, in that support, they
Yeah.
include that they can learn any upgrade their knowledge or learn a skill or do a course in the host country. Are you aware of that? That some companies do it?
Yeah, there are companies who do provide support for the partners as well. And then yeah, sometimes it can be like a language course, or they organize, for example, meetups for the partners, like if it's a really big company, that the partners can meet each other and build connections. Or sometimes like career support, so that the partner can also find work in the host country. So there are definitely some companies that do that, but I feel like there's still a lot of work to
Yeah,
be done, and that's why I feel like what I do is also important with that as well, to raise the awareness that it's necessary. Because I feel like many companies don't realize that part yet and are still sort of focused on the traditional support instead of thinking a little bit broader, like, okay, there's more to this, and it's important to provide more support. Yeah.
In your experience, do you think that women who are working and then who are going to move where there is going to be no visa, like no work permit, so they cannot work, in your experience, are those women more scared, or the ones who are like stay-at-home mom who are for the moment just looking after a kid, and then they're just going to go there and also still going to look after a kid? So do you
Yeah, I mean,
the preparation, you think a woman who takes more time to prepare mentally, a stay-at-home mom or the one who is working and then not going to work there?
what I've seen in my experience is the partner who sort of loses the job back home and then needs to find a new job has more struggles to adjust. Like when you sort of don't change the situation when you are at home taking care of the kids, and you do that in the other country as well. I mean, of course, there are changes, but sort of that part in a way stays similar. But if you really have to find another job, it's this whole new work field that you have to get to know and put yourself out there. And I think that's usually more challenging for people. Yeah. Yeah.
In
But of
your
course, yeah, it also depends on each person. But yeah, and like what I've seen so far, like in general, that's usually a bit more challenging.
Now, moving back to your repatriation experience, how was it for you
Mm-hmm.
to come back home? I know because I'm as well back home, but I'm an expat. So I'm back home in my country, but feel quite disconnected. Uh,
Mm.
and I'm sure you as well have gone through that. But at least now that you have got the purpose of your living there, you have something to do, but it didn't come quite easily. It came quite through some challenges. How was that for you?
Yeah, it's like you said, it really came with challenges. When I moved back to the Netherlands, I was really in shock because I left Australia like unexpectedly.
Right.
During the pandemic, I lost my visa, and well, I lost my job, and my visa was linked to my job. So within 2 weeks, I had to pack my bags and leave. And it was really not part of the plan because I was literally planning to spend at least a few more years there. And who knows what the future
Yeah.
would bring. So then suddenly I was back in the Netherlands without a plan, without a job during lockdown. And I was like, what am I doing here? And I was completely lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do next in my life. I was like, oh, do I even want to go back to an office job, or do I need to do something else? I was like completely questioning sort of my whole life, and I didn't feel at home in the Netherlands. So that was also a challenge for me because I felt like, okay, this is the country that I grew up and where I was raised. It's what feels familiar, but somehow I feel very disconnected here. I don't relate to people, and I had this reverse culture shock. I
Yeah.
really had to get used to the culture, even though I knew it in a way, but it still felt different. I felt like an outsider. So that took quite a while to get used to. And what you said, like once I sort of made that shift of like finding my new purpose, and that really came through this journey of self-discovery, really asking myself all of those questions, those big questions like, okay, what do I want in my life? What do I want to do as my next steps? What really makes me happy? Where do I want to go? What does home mean to me? Like asking myself all those questions, really going through coaching and lots of meditation and healing and lots of different things. It led me like step by step towards finding actually the inspiration to start my own business and to become certified as a coach, because that's when I realized that there was actually not that much support out there for people who were going through those challenges. And based on my experience working in corporate with expats for so many years, I knew there was a lot of support out there for like the practical stuff, but not really those other challenges and those life questions and just what happens with you mentally and emotionally when you move countries. So that's when sort of this spark came to me to become certified as a travel coach, and then afterwards also to become certified as a life coach. I did like meditation trainings, energy healings, like lots of things to sort of complement that.
Yeah.
And to really build a toolkit that I felt like I can really help people with their inner journeys and their outer journeys. And it really came from my own challenges and my own personal experiences of how important it is to take care of yourself when you go through those changes. And that if you don't do that,
Yeah.
that you really, that it can be really hard. Because I also realized that before I was always just focused on my career
Yeah.
and just working hard. And then suddenly when everything is just gone and you're like just sitting there with yourself in another country, you're like, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing? And what is actually important to me? And what do I want my life to look like? So it was definitely a whole journey. But looking back now, I'm sort of like parts of it glad that it happened because it really gave me the push to start my own business.
Yeah.
A part of me still doesn't like to be in this country, and sometimes I'm like, should I move back to Australia because I really loved living there.
Yeah.
But I found my way, and I know that this feels like a temporary destination to me. So who knows what the future will bring. And yeah, I feel like I'm just making the most of it, like whatever comes my way right now, and just taking it step by step towards a new adventure. Yeah.
I know that in Netherlands you have a lot of on bicycle. The people use bicycles a lot for, yeah, I don't know. Like I think the transport is there, but I think, do you also have a bicycle? Do you also?
Actually, it's funny because yeah, before I used to cycle a lot, but now since I'm back, I still have the bicycle, but I think I got so much used to walking everywhere because that's what I used to do in Australia, would just walk around the city.
Okay.
That here I also still walk a lot, and I mean I do have a car here now, so if I like have like longer distances, of course I take the car, but if it's not too far, I think most people would just grab their bicycle here, and I would just be like, oh, I can walk, and then I just walk for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, most people don't do that. So I think I changed a bit with that as well. Before I would also just cycle, and now I'm like, oh, I like to walk. Let me just walk, even though it takes maybe a bit longer. So yeah, it's interesting how you sort of change your habits as well. Also, when it comes to food, for example, like here, traditionally, Dutch people eat bread for lunch, like a sandwich.
Yeah.
And I just changed that completely. Now my biggest meal of the day is lunch, and it's sort of like the warm meal. And it's
Yeah.
completely different than what I grew up with. But
Yeah.
it's something like a habit I created when I was abroad, and I actually feel better with it. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to change back just because I'm here now. I just keep on doing those type of things. So it's sometimes those small things that you take with you from your previous experiences,
Yeah.
that sometimes can make it harder to adjust, but you also have to sort of stay true what works for you, and find sort of the balance in between those things to find your way, especially when you move back to your home country.
I think expat assignments are really an opportunity for transforming for everybody. There's something for everyone there, whether it is kids, the spouses, the husbands, for the whole family. And I don't think so it's going to get any older or out of, how do I say, trend or fashion. People would still like to kind of move abroad, live abroad, whether as an expat or like nomad, like you did, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really glad that we did this podcast. And I think you covered really most of the questions, whether advices, the strategies to cope with the loneliness or changing the mind shift. I think we covered really a lot of things, and I'm happy that we did that. Anything else that you would like to cover besides what we discussed so far?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of things, and I really loved your questions and how we like dove deep into it. So I think that was really great. So yeah, there's nothing that really comes to my mind right now that I feel like we missed. So yeah, I think it was really great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you really for your time. I am gonna share your link. It's
I can maybe
Veer.
yes, yeah. My website is
How do you say
Unpack by Veer. So my name is Veerle,
Veerle?
and my company's name is Unpack by Veer.
Okay.
So my website is unpackbyveer.com. And
I'm gonna
all my
share-
social media channels are also Unpacked by Veer. So wherever you find me, if you type that, you can find me. Yeah.
I'm gonna share your links so people know what you do, and I'm sure there
Yeah.
will be somebody who can really approach you and will find big advice from your website, from the guidelines that you share.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always love to connect with people. So if someone has like a question or wants some support or whatever, just want to connect, just send me a message.
One click
Yeah.
away.
One click away. Exactly.
Thank you so much